Ladies and gentlemen, Wei Koh here at Watches and Wonders 2023 at the Cartier booth with the man himself, Cyrille Vigneron. How are you, sir?
Very fine.
Yes. Cyrille,
It's a pleasure to have you.
the pleasure
as
is mine. You know, I'm so pleased to be here, and I have so much respect and awe for what you've achieved with Cartier. In 7 years now, you've returned it to an extraordinary status. As of 2 years ago, even, you overtook the other brands to become the #2 luxury watch brand in the world.
We're very happy with this result.
Right. But I know that result was a result of a long-term vision in terms of singularity, right?
Yes.
About you returning Cartier to its position as the king of elegance, as I'd like to put it as well.
Yes.
Could you please tell me a little bit about the initial moment when you took the brand over and you were searching for the connective tissue to achieve this and how you went about it?
So at that time, 7 years ago, there were kind of convictions that had driven the previous strategy that didn't prove to be true. First, it was a market of novelties, and so in some way thinking you can make as many novelties as possible, then you would be kind of ticking all the quadrants. But by doing that, you can go out of your territory, because it's not a market of novelties, but a market of distinctiveness. So the question is, what was Cartier really about? And as you say, it was about elegance, proportion, shapes, design coming first, technicality serving the design and not the reverse. So when trying to go to something very sporty but very big and thin, it was not Cartier. Or sometime when even for jewelry watches, I say too big or too showy, it was not also Cartier. So say, let's do as you can do if you come to an old palazzo. You open the doors, open all the window, let the fresh air come in, you brush up all the frescoes, and you see how beautiful they are. And you remove all the stuck, all the dust, everything coming in there, and you try to put down before you do anything else. And so for the past 7 years, we started to take from the past, recent past, or all the past, all the iconic shape that would define the Cartier style through history. All those who had passed the test of time and still be beautiful today. And we tried to put, on the contrary, in the shade all the other one. So we did that one by one with the Panther, with the Santos-Dumont, and Pasha, and Baignoire, and so forth, and brought them back all to light. And then, to our surprise, not actually surprise, meaning general public and collected and so forth, say, but that's the Cartier we like.
Precisely.
And your colleague Nick was also asking, when do you relaunch the CPCP? Collection Privée Cartier Paris. At some point say, no, the entire Cartier is CPCP. We only have iconic shape. So this was the key driving force. The other elements say, don't try to convince men that you can be legitimate watchmaker doing movement and so forth, because Cartier was not born in movement. We can do excellent movement, we have to, but we do excellent shapes and right proportion, and then have to convince men to be elegant. And so our highest complication is elegance, not the fact to make the thinnest, the longest power reserve or thing like that. We can do beautiful things like the Masse Sillante, which also come to these mysterious clocks that have been there in the Cartier history for the 1920s. So when we come to that field and we can find some complication that serve that, we are in our territory. But to do a minute repeater or tourbillon that many other brands can do is not necessarily our territory by itself. So the key point say, be true to who we are. But Cartier has been from the beginning of the 20th century, whether from the Louis Cartier creative style or with the London creative style 1970s, with the Crash, with the Tank and Pebble,
yes,
and many very, very interesting shape. Let's take the best of what has been done and put them back to light and be humble to serve that.
That's fantastic, and I love how instead of trying to go to another audience, you brought that audience back to you by creating singularity and perenniality. And I think there's a wonderful watch here that demonstrates that. This is the new Santos-Dumont with this beautiful mass.
Yes.
And this is a watch that was created in 1904, and in fact was the very first men's watch ever created.
Absolutely.
And you have also demonstrated how you use technical value to serve the needs of beauty. And here you've got this beautiful open work watch with an amazing rotor that features Demoiselle. Micro rotor that features Demoiselle, which is one of the aircrafts that Alberto Santos-Dumont created. Tell us a little bit about how this takes all of what you're talking about and brings it into one watch.
Yeah. So to make this movement, which is skeleton, in a very, very thin shape, needs a lot of technicality to make it beautiful. And when it comes to the micro rotor, because it's very small, it lacks inertia. If you do in tungsten, that would be the normal metal. So we had to do it in platinum so that it can work properly. And so to have a beautiful design that looks so natural and have this little tiny airplane that gives them also a lot of evocation power. So we don't have also to work on externalities. In the booth, we don't see planes, boats, cars, just element of peacefulness.
Right.
And the same here, the plane is inside. You don't have to make a kind of a something expressing aircrafts or planes or aerodynamics, because everything has to fit inside the design. And that's what our development team try to do. Something that looks a Santos-Dumont. We can see a little plane and it can work as a movement.
On the wrist is absolutely phenomenal, and I loved how elegant it is because it's so slim.
Yes.
And I think this is a wonderful expression of technical value serving beauty, right?
Yes.
I'll put it here, and it's effortless to wear, and it's so slim and so elegant. Let's go from this to a watch that I'm very excited to see return. It was designed in 1987, launched in 1988 in the United States,
Yes.
and then brought to the rest of the world in 1989, and it
Yes.
is the Tank Américaine. And as someone that is very fortunate to own a Tank Cintré, what I like is it's a watch that takes the emotional value of the Tank Cintré, but
Yeah.
puts it in maybe a more universal package, if I may
Absolutely.
say. Please tell me about that, sir.
So I think to me, the Tank Américaine is one of the epitome of the Cartier elegance. The curves are just simple, beautiful, but for the initial one, because of its curve, to put an automatic movement in that in a large model need to be rather thick. So when relaunching it, let's say we have to make it slimmer.
Right.
So I had to redevelop the movement, automatic movement, to be fitting in that space. And so it makes kind of 1 millimeter difference, but then it's just a perfect curve. And you, on the wrist, it comes just so natural. It can be masculine, can be feminine, depending on the size you want to wear. And it's really universal and absolutely timeless.
It's brilliant.
That's Cartier.
I absolutely love it. And I have so much respect also for how you're making the watch accessible to the next generation. The steel version of this watch, for
Yes.
example, with an automatic movement, is a price that I found to be extraordinary in terms of value. If I'm not mistaken, it's 5,600 Swiss francs or euros,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yes. And to me, I mean, as a young person looking to have something that expresses the iconic value of Cartier in a price that actually I can afford, I mean, that's tremendous. How important is this engagement of the next generation?
Well, I think there is a tendency on the watch industry to yield and to say if customers are ready to buy expensive amount, even for steel watches, we should price them. And there are some examples of those who have come to amount that seems to us a bit difficult to justify. We can say it's just a question of offer and demand, but we think that it's more important to talk to the old generation and say, you can afford this one. And as far as the production condition make it possible, and of course steel is cheaper than gold or than platinum, you can do something that could be affordable for a young generation and can appreciate its beauty. We want to do everything, even if it's a quote-unquote accessible product, to be beautiful. When we redesign the Tank Solo, we say let's come to the older design of Tank Louis Cartier and make it just simply beautiful. It's affordable for many and all can appreciate its beauty. We say a luxury brand should be exclusive, but including,
Right.
not excluding. So you should have this beauty available for everyone. Everyone, of course, you can afford, and of course we know it's going to privilege. You should not put the limit too far to say only for those who can pay that price. So we want the beauty to be a universal quest.
I love that. You know, it's funny to me because everywhere I go, collectors are just asking usually one question: could you make it a bit smaller? And I think that Cartier has single-handedly brought back, I wouldn't say small, but this appreciation for classic beauty in terms of proportion.
Yes.
I've seen now men wearing sort of medium-sized, like Baignoires, tanks, the original proportions of the tanks, and they look phenomenal. It looks relevant to today.
Yes.
It looks modern, in fact, which I
Absolutely.
love. What I loved about this was you also launched a mini version of the
Yes.
Tank American, and I've actually asked to buy one because I'm going to wear it like a bracelet on my other wrist
Yes.
because it's just such a wonderful accessory, and it's so beautiful even in this execution. The
Absolutely.
universality is amazing.
Yes. It suits you.
Thank you very much.
Of course, main target would be more the Asian women who have a very small wrist, and on that it looks just perfect.
Yes.
But as you say, you can have many just fine. And many of the watches in the 1920s were very small. And then, of course, there has been kind of inflation,
Right.
maybe inflation of the ego, but we have to come back to something coming back to earth.
Exactly. What I've always loved what you said is that a Cartier watch is not an expression of gender, it's an expression of the strength of your character.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a wonderful example of that. Okay, I have to go from that to a watch that I think has now sent out incredible amounts of like feelings of lust and adoration and desire around the entire world. I don't know how you're going to manage the problem of allocating the 100 pieces which you've made, and that has to be this amazing Tank Normale in a platinum bracelet. Please tell me about the desire to bring this watch back.
Well, as you know, for the Privé, we try to bring back to life one model per year.
Right.
And so last year we had the Tank Chinoise, which worked very well. And we say we have to relaunch Tank Normale and to make it in platinum with a very special bracelet. And we did. And the proportions are just perfect.
It's incredible.
They say it's timeless, it's classic, it's modern, it looks so contemporary. And as you say now, we have the problem to say how to allocate the 100 pieces. And that will be our nightmare for the next coming, I don't know, 2 generations. People will reproach us, say, how have you done that? Well done for me.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
It fits every wrist and strap.
It is magnificent. And Cyrille,
of course, we have some other model in gold.
Yes.
And we have some also which have some skeletons. So,
Yes.
so those who really want a Normale can have one.
Yes.
Not the one in platinum, which will be very, very few.
you know, and I love that this was born in the second decade of the 20th century.
Yes.
And it's over 100 years old.
Yes.
And yet it feels so fantastically modern on the wrist. And I love also the application of completely satinized finish
Yes.
on it, which makes it even feel even more modern.
Yeah.
You know, the relevance is extraordinary. You know, the power of your designs is incredible.
That's the part of when we define timelessness, it's not what ages well. You cannot date them.
Right.
And that's the part we say, someone coming to watchmaking now will look at that and say,
Yes.
that's a nice Tank watch, it's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
So you did it just yesterday. Say, well, not exactly, it's 100 years old.
Yes.
It doesn't look like 100 years old.
At all. At all.
Not at all.
You know, one of the things I want to talk about is I find it kind of funny because everyone talks about the integrated bracelet sports watch phenomenon in the 1970s.
Yes.
But if I go back to 1917, I'm looking at this watch which has a bracelet with it and actually is even more a time-telling formed art piece on the
Yes.
wrist. And that's what I love. And I see that really beautifully communicated throughout much of the collection this year as well.
Yes.
And I think this Baignoire is a very nice example of that. Can you tell us about that, please?
So, you know, when in the year 2000, there was another version of Baignoire when there was a tendency to have kind of a sharp angle shapes, which came basically from the Tank Française and then moved also on the Revolution. It was on the Santos-Dumont and tried to make this kind of angular, sharper. But when we revisited our collection, we thought the Baignoire has to be round.
Yes.
It has to be pulpous. It has
Yes.
to be round. And we relaunched it both on the Baignoire and the Baignoire Allongé, and it had also phenomenal success. But then say, if it's so much like a bijou, why not try on a bangle? And try on a bangle, and it works super well. Simply natural as a kind of an evidence. And it's a part of that also design. When you define something that works, when everyone looks at it and say, it's evident, it's unavoidable. It should have been like that from the beginning. And that's a part, again, we say, it looks like been done like in 1920. And this was not the case. This was the case in 1920, but not this kind of bangle. But it looks so natural that probably...
Fantastic.
And there was something very interesting on what Louis Cartier said. He said about the mother idea. He said, when you think about strong design, there is a mother idea that encapsulates them all. And in some way, in the Tank Louis Cartier, you have them all. You have the Tank Louis Cartier, you have the Tank Française, Tank Américaine that came much, much later. And then the Tank Asymétrique, and then the Tank Basculante, and the Tank à Guichet, and the Tank Cintré, and all of them are part of the family that takes their origin in the initial idea, that take them all. The Baignoire, probably at the origin, already had this idea, probably. Because when we make it, say, must have been like that from the beginning.
Right.
So that's the part where when you think backward, you think probably it must have been like that. In music, I would make a comparison with Bach. Bach had a very kind of, I don't know how he could do that in his own brain, because if you think about the limitation you had with instrument and so forth,
right.
He composed music for many kinds of instruments and very easy to transcript. So what he wrote for harpsichord or organ, in piano, sound even better.
Oh wow.
So the piano didn't exist when he composed.
It's incredible.
But in the piano, it sounded even better.
Right.
And then when you transcript what he has done for violin to piano, or from lute to guitar, all things work.
Incredible.
Everything works. And you can do in jazz, it works as well.
Right.
So he had a global view of what the musicality can be, and then can come many forms that exist after him. So you have some forms of Bach visited by Liszt and by Horowitz, and all come the same thread to something that all work. And then by Jacques Lussier for jazz or Edouard Ferlet. So there is something similar in the spirits of Louis Cartier to make mother idea that in fact can be deviated or used or explored in many ways,
wow.
all linked to the same family.
I love that.
In their own way.
Right.
So the Tank Normale is naturally the part of the Tank Louis Cartier in its own way. And this baignoire with a bangle probably existed in Louis Cartier's mind 100 years ago.
Right.
And if it did not, it existed probably in his unconscious mind.
Yes.
So that's a part of the mother idea.
I love that. Okay, last question. We were discussing previously, there was a report by Morgan Stanley in terms of the performance of watch brands, and Cartier is certainly one of the stars. In 2021, it was estimated, I know you don't disclose, that the turnover of Cartier was 2.7 billion or more, which placed you in the position of the number 2 luxury watch brand in the world. 2022 was a year I would imagine you've grown even more. Would you be comfortable kind of telling us approximately where you might be in terms of your success?
I cannot give numbers, especially we are in closed period now.
Of course.
But your guesstimate is not very far.
Okay.
Of saying that we have grown even farther,
wow.
and farther than the market overall. So our position as number 2 in sales, I think, has been converted.
Wonderful.
But I cannot say more.
Okay, lastly, I have 3 awards I'd like to present to you, please. The best concept for the Mass Mysterious for last year.
Thank you.
The best jewelry watch for the Crash Tigre.
Thank you.
And our first ethics award, because after visiting you last year, I had the great understanding of the underlying ethics of everything you've achieved. And you're a wonderful example that you can be an extraordinary capitalist, a great leader, but a great ethical person as well. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cyrille. And thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.